Hello, I'm Tom Martin. Welcome back to another episode of the San Francisco Conservative. I'm your host, Tom Martin, a longtime journalist with ABC News, CNN, CBS News, and I am always enjoying interviewing my colleague out on the West Coast, David Parker, author of two amazing books, Income and Wealth and A San Francisco Conservative. Hey, David, how are you today?
I'm fine. And by the way, how are you, Tom?
Well, even though you see the Golden Gate Bridge behind me, which is not for sale, well, it could be for the right price. I'm coming from Connecticut, coming to you from Connecticut, the East Coast. David's on the West Coast, and our politics are a little bit like that, also, as you sometimes may notice. And that's sort of what I wanted to get into with this conversation was politics, red and blue. This is a year when, in November, people are going to be voting for many senators and congressmen, congresswomen, and I love the essay that you sent me recently, and you started it off talking about a really pivotal moment in American history, really the founding of America, in sort of this division between the red and the blue, Democrats and Republicans, has kind of spiraled out of that turning point, right? You want to tell us about that?
That red and blue almost spiraled out from day one, but no one thought quite in those terms. But Thomas Jefferson said that we're going to, at the beginning of the Revolutionary War, we're going to create something that doesn't exist anywhere in the world, has never existed. A nation without a king or a queen. A nation whose government is so small, you won't see it. A nation whose power is so dispersed that a nation with going to offer at maximum individual liberty. But the flip side, it requires maximum personal responsibility. And you can't count on the government to help you. That's the kind of nation we're creating. And if you're afraid of that, he said to Americans, leave now. The war we're going to start. We're taking on a military, British military, a huge military. We don't even have a military, and we're still going to fight them. And that's what we are about. That's what we believe. That's the character of this country. And independent, responsible citizens, and no government in our life.
And that's really
thousands and thousands of people fled. They fled to Canada.
Yeah.
And we were a successful country because of that stance. And then in 1933, we reversed it. We flipped it 100%. Someone said, I think his name was Franklin Roosevelt.
I've heard of it.
You heard of him. He says, government can be a force for good. Why are we thinking government is a force of evil? And let's reverse that. Let's have government step in and correct this depression. Let's do all these things. And so now we can't get out of it. We are a hugely expanded government. We're so big that the government can't even run itself. They have agencies running, making the EPA or board or the health or the Department of Education is making decisions for the country. And Congress people are not making decisions. They're delegating that because they don't want to have their name attached to any controversial. So we're completely reversed. And that's what I'm all about. I'm saying the founding fathers got it right. And we should go back and become a self-responsible.
Yeah, speaking of responsibility, personal responsibility, that certainly was a dramatic turning point in the history of our nation. And some people paint a picture of immigrants coming to the United States because they hear all these lavish government programs, daycare for everyone and stuff like that. But the impression I have is that so many people have come from China, South America, Africa, who see opportunity. They believe through hard work, they sort of embrace that sense of personal responsibility, right?
That's a false issue. The immigrants come for the welfare benefits. They don't. They're coming here to improve their lives. They realize they can't do it in their own country. The countries are corrupt, or there's no opportunity, or both. And they come here for themselves and mainly for their own children to have a better start in life. They're not coming here for those kind of welfare benefits. The preamble to the Constitution talks about the general welfare of the nation, among other things. But that's not what any of the founding fathers meant, that government should become a welfare department. They weren't thinking about that. That's not what they meant. That was just a general term, but the progressives latch onto that, as that is the essence of the Constitution. Social security, not social freedom, social security. Big difference. That's the split we have today. Is the split we've always had, and perhaps will always have.
And again, in the essay that you shared with me, you spoke about the concept of fear. When you talk about that split, you said a lot of it comes down to fear, right?
Right. The progressives are afraid to let citizens vote on everything. They want to control. They think Social Security and Medicare and universal basic income and public schools run by the government is so it's all about control, and control is about fear. They're afraid to let it be a part of nature, just everybody on their own. That was the original thought, where it comes from Adam Smith. It comes from before Adam Smith, and it's almost Darwinian. We're a species in nature. There's no species in nature where one animal or a group or a leader tells others what to do. That's a good guide for human beings. Nobody should be telling anybody what to do.
Yeah. I'll just throw in real quick, if you're just joining us midstream here, this is another episode of A San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series featuring myself, Tom Martin, asking some questions, hopefully thought-provoking questions that you all enjoy, and our hosts and our thought leader here, David Parker, author of Income and Wealth and A San Francisco Conservative. And David, a lot of this, again, this split, you mentioned the progressives and so on. Have we lost sight of what the Constitution is really all about?
Absolutely. That's what the red-blue split is all about. Exactly that. The Reds would say, or I would certainly say, the Constitution is one page long. It's a big page because it was handwritten. It was florid handwriting. You can go to Washington, D.C. I forget which building, but you can take a look at it. It's on a big artist's easel. There's the Constitution. It's one page. It says, we're going to elect our leaders, and we're going to keep them in check by having checks and balances in government. So no dictators can arise in this country. Everything is checked and checked and checked. One page. In Europe, they have what's called the Maastricht Agreement, which is their constitution for the European Union. 254 pages and expanding, like our tax code, because every case is different. As if there's nothing to learn from history. Every case is different. Every person has a real reason why they have to break the Constitution, or they should be an exception to a simple set of rules. And Reds say, if you can't live by a simple set of rules, you don't have anything. We're through. And Blues say, if you can't move on from something that was written 250 years ago, we're through. I mean, life is complex. The universe is complex. We can't have any set of rules. We can't have the 10 Commandments or the Golden Rule. We need more than that. We need 25 Golden Rules and 500 commandments. That's the big difference. Big difference. Principle.
Yeah, I this might sound like a strange question, but I can't resist asking it. Some of my friends in the fields of like marketing and advertising or coaching say, okay, if you could wave a magic wand and have it any way you want it, how would you like things to be, in your business, in your life, what have you? Is there any, ideal vision you have of the American voter? They've heard so many false promises. I think many political leaders and candidates have preyed on that fear in recent years. And, if the American voter could wake up to the way things really work and what America is really all about, what would you hope that they would understand?
Here's the magic wand.
Yeah.
Boom. No government.
That's simple.
There it is. Madison, who wrote much of the Constitution, had to be convinced to even have it. He says, why are we having government? He couldn't see any reason for it. I love that that position. Why? Why? Just he was finally convinced, and comes out in what's called Federalist 51. Not all men are angels. There's some bad people out there. So we need a neutral third party. So citizens don't take the law in their own hands. A neutral third party to protect life, liberty, and property, or you could say social, political, economic freedom. That's fair. And that's police departments in cities that pay for property taxes. That's not income tax. And schools originally were funded. That was Thomas Jefferson, to protect democracy. You need to educate the citizens, or else you're going to lose it. But they never said that the government was going to do the educating. That we're going to have, like in Russia, the teachers say what they're told to say. We'll give people money, funds to educate their children if they can't afford it, so that everybody has an education regardless of social status. That's fine, that's correct. But nobody ever thought that the government is going to be the educator. No one ever thought in those terms. That's a very modern, thanks to Karl Marx, who nobody would have otherwise would have thought in those terms.
It's interesting. I think, you know, my favorite news source these days is definitely on the liberal spectrum. But nevertheless, they do every once in a while interview random voters, you know, going up to vote in a primary in one state or another. And the other day, one of these random sound bites, a person on the street said, I think they should just, you know, get them out of office. Like they shouldn't presume that they're going to be on their 20th term or whatever. I think in this case, they were referring to the Laxalt family of Arizona, if I remember correctly. And nothing against that candidate, but just so many of the politicians seem to be ensconced and make these false promises or these destructive promises term after term. Do you think there should be term limits, or do you think there's, I mean, if we can't abolish government right away, I can't imagine that totally.
No, you don't have to have term limits. That's just nobody's business. If the public wants somebody, that they should be able to vote for them. And I taught my whole life inner city public schools, 40 years and then 10 years as a volunteer. And if someone would ask me, what's the one thing you take away from public school teaching? And that would be for inner city public school teaching, is that don't underestimate people. Don't underestimate your students. Don't underestimate their parents, who may be wrong at a particular point about moment in life, a time about something, and just tell them, I think you're wrong, and listen to me and think about it. And then don't underestimate people. So here I am in San Francisco. I'm a San Francisco conservative, by definition, not that conservative. It's supposed to be a funny title. But right here in this town, we just threw out 3 members of the Board of Education, and now we just threw out the district attorney. Threw them out because they were liberal, because they were over the top liberal. Everybody gets the message after a while. Everybody gets the message. It's just progressives are slower to get it. That's all.
Well, I think this note of that we can have faith in our fellow human beings.
Yeah,
a good.
I do. I really do.
Yeah. Well, that's a great note to end on. I just want to, before closing, remind everybody to be sure to pick up copies of David's books, Income and Wealth and The San Francisco Conservative. You can order them on his website, davidparkeressays.com, or you can go right to Amazon and order them there. So thanks, David. Great to see you again. Look forward to the next time.
You too. Thank you.